very first time, you can create a new project using this button that's in the middle. After you've worked on a couple of projects, your recent projects will appear here. So for new projects, you can make use of the new project button on the left side here at the top. And on this next window, you can type in the name of your project under project name. And then you can also select where you want the project to save. By default, Adobe will create its own folder in your documents on your computer, but you can select a different place if you want it to save somewhere else. And then under import settings here to the right, make sure everything else is unselected. And then you can select create at the bottom right of your screen. And welcome to Premiere Pro. The first thing you need to know are workspaces. Workspaces are simply layouts of tools and functions that you find in different panels. Essentially, the typical workflow process of video editing software is you import footage into a project and you add footage to a timeline. Then you edit those assets in the timeline. Then you add some effects and transitions, and then you're done. You export the final video. So a workspace is basically the interface that helps you achieve that workflow. By default, Premiere Pro CC 2024 comes with about 17 different workspaces. You have a workspace for editing color, one for audio, another for graphics, and so on. And above all, you can create your own custom workspace to best suit your workflow. You do not need to use all 17 workspaces to start and finish a project. In fact, we will create one workspace that I find to be simple when starting. This will help you to only have access to what you need on screen and understand the program faster. With that said, first you want to open the learning workspace. And to do so, you can navigate to workspaces. On the top, you'll see there are 4 icons, and the fourth one coming from your right is the workspaces icon. And then you can just select learning. You can also access workspaces by going to window, and then you navigate under workspaces, and then you select learning. And this is the learning workspace. We need to close 2 panels and add 2 panels to complete our custom workspace. So we're going to close this first panel, which is called the learn panel. So you can just right click and then select on close panel. And then we'll also close the media browser, which is here at the bottom, right click, close browser. After that, you can go to window and click on effect controls. It'll open next to the source monitor, and then you can click and drag that panel to the far right next to the program monitor. So we're gonna drag it all the way here like so. And then you can also adjust these panels, as you can see. And then we're going to add our second panel. You go under window again, and then you click on effects. It'll open the panel next to your project panel. So we want to move that as well. You can click and drag it all the way to the right as well, just under where you put your effect controls. And then we can also adjust this so it's a bit visible. Now we can save this as a new workspace. So again, you can go to this icon and select on save as new workspace, or you can go to window, workspaces, save as a new workspace. Now we're going to call this our workspace. Then you click on OK. So now every time you open Premiere Pro, it will open in this workspace, or if it opens in a different one by mistake, you always go to workspaces and then you click on our workspace, and then it will have this exact workspace. Now let us better understand what all these panels actually do for you. I have divided this workspace into 8 sections to make it easier for you. Section A is your project panel. This is where you import all your media files that you intend to edit or use for editing. Think of it as your file manager inside Premiere Pro. In addition, the project panel is where any supported material created inside the application will be stored, such as sequences, graphics, or adjustment layers, and so on. Section B is the source monitor. The source monitor can be used to play back and preview individual clips that you would have imported into your project panel. Additionally, you can use the source monitor to preview a clip even if it's now on your timeline. In section C, this is your sequence or timeline panel. In short, a sequence in Premiere Pro is a video timeline where you do most of your editing, which includes adding clips, adding transitions and effects, as well as defining the arrangement of your video. you can create different sequences in a single project. Section D is where you find the Tools panel. This panel has the various editing tools available to you in Premiere Pro. The cursor will change based on the tool that is active and the type of content that you are hovering over. In section E, we have the program monitor. Unlike the source monitor, which previews any clip that you double click on, the program monitor is used to play back and preview only what you are editing on the timeline. And in section F, we have effect controls. You can use the effect controls panel to access the natural properties of a clip that you have edited in your timeline, such as motion, which changes position, scale, rotation of your clip, and you have opacity, which changes the transparency, and audio, which changes volume properties. Additionally, when you apply effects to your clips, the controls or properties of those effects will appear in this panel as well. The next section is Effects panel, where you find several video and audio effects and transitions. Placing transitions between clips allows you to transition from one clip to another. Placing effects onto clips allows you to change the appearance of your videos or the quality of your audio. And then the last section is the audio meter. This panel is a meter that shows the volume of your clips that are playing on the timeline. This will help you roughly gauge if your audio is clipping or if it's too low. And there you have it, a brief introduction to the Premiere Pro interface. Different workspaces will introduce different panels and features. However, what I'll teach you in this course is the core of what you need to begin editing. You can either import your media by going to File and then scrolling to Import, or you can use the Import tab here at the top. If you click right there, this will open a window that allows you to access files that are on your computer, and you can just simply navigate to your desired files to import them. So you can use devices here, or if you have anything on the cloud, or you can use some of these stock clips that they have added on here. But I'll go back to the Edit tab. What I find easy, however, is to initially organize your files in Finder or File Explorer, depending on which system you're on. And then I drop those files and folders into my project panel. As you can see, I've already sorted my folders inside Finder, and I'm just going to select everything and drag it into my project panel. You will notice that Premiere Pro has retained the folder names that I actually created. At the bottom of the project panel, you'll see some icons. From the far right, we have delete. So as the name suggests, if I click on this and I delete, that deletes whatever I would have selected. So I'll just undo that. And then next to delete, you have new item. This allows you to add items to your project. And then next you have new bin. In Premiere Pro, folders are called bins. So this icon simply creates a new folder. So if I click on it, it creates a new bin, and I can say new folder, just like that. So now I can put some assets in there. Just gonna undo that, remove it. The next icon is find, which allows you to search and find for an entry in your project. It's very useful when you have a lot of folders and files in one project. And then the next icon is called automate sequence. In this course, we will not cover automating a sequence. However, this allows you to automate the addition of your clips to your timeline. It's a tool that would be great to learn once you have mastered all the basics. And then next we've got sort by. You have so many options here. You can sort your footage depending on whatever criteria you want to use, by name, by media type, by media duration, comments. Just like in any other browser, you can specify a criteria to use to sort your footage. And then this slider just is an adjustment for icon sizes. So you can just make them bigger or make them smaller. Again, this is useful once you have a lot of folders or a lot of clips in your project. And then lastly, you have these three icons, which are your viewing options. You have freeform view, which is the first one. And then you have icon view, which is what we are on. And then you have list view. I will explain how I usually use the different viewing options. For now, I'll leave it in list view. When you double click on a bin or a folder, it will open a new tab for that folder in the project panel. For macOS users, this is the same concept as how your Finder works with tabs. I like to use list view when I look at folders, right? But when I'm looking at videos, for example, if I double click on this, when I'm looking at this folder which has videos in it, I like to use the icon view. This allows me to see the clips by making use of the thumbnails. And you can see that when I'm hovering over the videos, I can actually get a quick scrub through or playback of each clip. This really helps. But when I'm viewing folders or even music, I just use list view because then it actually helps to keep it compact. To view a clip in the source monitor, you just double click on it from your project panel. Once in the source monitor, you have a couple of functions available to you. From the left, you have add marker. This will create a reference at a particular point of your clip that will act as a guide when you are editing. This is useful, especially when you want to mark at the beat of a song. So for example, if I put a marker here, you'll see it'll add this green arrow or icon, if you would call it, that is a marker. And then after that, you have add in point. This allows you to choose where you want your video to start, or in other words, define what the starting point is before you add it to your timeline. You can always change this later, so do not worry. So if I, for example, say I want to start it here, I can then click on mark in, and you'll see it will create a gray overlay here just to show you that this is the part that you are currently trimming. So everything that is outside of this grayed out area will not be added to your timeline. And after that, we have mark out, which is to add your out point. So it's basically the opposite of your in point. So say we've decided to end it here, and we can click on there. You'll notice that some of these icons already have keyboard shortcuts assigned to them. Your keyboard shortcut for add marker is M, your keyboard shortcut for mark in is I, and mark out is O. So if I wanted, say, to actually change the out point to be a bit further away here, I can then just click on O on my keyboard and it will mark it accordingly. And then next you have go to in point, which basically just takes you to the in point. So if I had scrubbed through this little thing that I'm dragging, that is your playhead. So if I have my playhead here and I just want to jump straight to my in point, I can click on here and it will take me exactly where my in point is. And just as I say it again, there are keyboard shortcuts. You'll see it in brackets there. And for me, it's Shift I. So if I press on Shift I on my keyboard, it goes straight to the in point. And then you have the opposite of that, which is go to out point, which is a couple of icons away. So if I click on that, it does the opposite. It goes to your out point. Next, we have step back one frame. If you are trying to make fine adjustments, you can use this to move one frame at a time backwards. Just in case you didn't know, videos are just frames shot in a second. You can have a video that is shot at 24, 25, 30, or 60 frames per second, and so on. So this allows you to move frame by frame. So if I keep on clicking backwards, you'll see what it's actually doing right there. And the keyboard shortcut for that is the left arrow. So if I keep on pressing left arrow, you can see what's happening. And then after that, you've got your play stop button. This just plays your video, and then you can also stop it using the same button. And then we have step forward one frame, which just does the opposite of what step back one frame does. And the keyboard shortcut for that is the right arrow key. And then we've already spoken about go to out point. And then I'm just going to quickly skip these two and go straight to export frame. This basically takes a screen grab or a screenshot of the current frame that your playhead sits on. Say if you wanted to export this current frame as an image, I can click on export frame, or I can use Shift E, which is the default shortcut for that. And then I can save this with whatever format I want, as an image or PNG or any of these formats that you have here. And then you can also specify where you want it to save on your computer. And then once you're done, you just click on OK, and then it saves it as an image. Now, let's go back to those other two icons, insert and overwrite. They may be difficult to understand, but I will try to re-explain them actually in the next lesson as well. The first one is insert. Use this to insert a clip exactly where the playhead is in your timeline, and at the same time, it will move everything on the right of the playhead to come after that clip you have edited. And then overwrite, you use this to add a clip to the current position of your playhead in the timeline, and it will delete the existing footage for the duration of that new edit clip. Now, I know that may be difficult to understand now, but I will show you and illustrate how it works, especially in the next lesson when we actually add things to our timeline. Now, let's look at the other functions that are actually in your source monitor before we continue. On the left side here at the top above everything else we've been covering, you've got your time indication, which just shows you where your playhead is currently positioned in terms of time. You can also right click here and choose what you wanted to show. You wanted to show frames or you wanted to show time code. I would suggest you leave it a time code if you are still a beginner. Next, you can also choose the zoom level of what you see in the source monitor. So if it's on fit, it currently is showing what the entire frame looks like. But if you choose, let's say 200%, you'll see that it actually zooms in a bit, and then you can use these sliders to move around your frame. And if you choose something smaller, like 25%, you'll see that you'll have a bit of negative space around the frame in itself. This is just for viewing purposes. It doesn't change anything in your actual video or your actual output. And then to the right, you can also choose your playback resolution. You have full, half, a quarter, an eighth, and a 16th. I'm assuming that's what you call it. But this allows you to lower the quality of the video whilst you are editing to ensure smooth playback on computers, especially with inferior graphics cards or CPUs. This will not affect the quality of your final video again when you're now exporting. This is purely for viewing purposes and how your computer is actually processing what you're seeing. So the less quality it shows you, the better it can actually process things and the faster it can do it. The time indication on the right shows the duration of your clip between your in and out points. So if I click and drag this in and out point, you can see the value here is changing. So this just shows us that our in and out, which is our trimmed version of this clip, is this long. This is the time indication, just to show us that it's 8 seconds. Then in the middle, we have these two buttons. Most videos come with audio. If you want to only use the video without any audio, you can drag your video using this icon onto your timeline, and it will only import the video. Same thing goes if you want to just import the audio, then you can use this icon, which drags only the audio onto your timeline. And if you wanted to add both video and audio, you can just click from inside and drag it onto your timeline. There are other ways of actually adding your clips to the timeline, and that's one of them. So now that I've chosen my in and out point for this clip and I want both video and audio, I can click and drag from inside the frame itself and drop it onto the timeline. You will notice that as soon as I dropped my first clip, a sequence was created in our timeline panel. When you start a sequence this way, it is automatically named after the first clip you added. And you can see the name of my clip here on the timeline is the same name at the top here of your sequence. And that sequence is also automatically added to your project panel. And sometimes it will just add it in the same folder that the clip you added is in, or it can put it somewhere else, but it's so easy to find. You can right click at the top of your sequence and you can say reveal sequence in project, and we can see where it saved it in my project. Personally, this is how I start my sequences 90% of the time, and straight after that, I just go and rename that sequence to whatever I want my final video to be called. So I'm just gonna rename this, let's say Cooking 101. You will notice that after I renamed this, it has also done the same at the top of our timeline here, just to show us that this is the sequence that is currently being shown here. And it no longer bears the name of the first clip that I edit. However, I will show you other ways of starting a sequence. You can start a sequence in 3 main ways. You can go to File, New, and then Sequence. And then you can specify your settings and details here. And once you're done, you can also name it here where it says sequence name. And then you click OK, and it will create that sequence. But we're not going to do that. This is just for me to show you one way. Another way is to do it through your project panel, where you go to New Item and then select Sequence. The same pop-up window will appear for you to be able to specify your settings and also specify your sequence name. And then once you click OK, that sequence will be created. But we are also not going to do that. What I think is the easiest way is what I showed you in the last lesson. You just drag and drop one of your clips from your project panel or from the source monitor straight onto the timeline panel, and the sequence will automatically be created with the same settings as the clip you added. This is really good if firstly you have clips that have the same settings, and secondly, if you're not really sure what settings your clips have, and if you're a beginner, that most likely is the case. So by doing it this way, Premiere Pro will select the correct settings for your clips. Because just imagine, I'm just going to add a sequence. Look at all these options that are here. If you do not know what 1080p means or what 25 FPS means, this can become really intimidating. Going into settings, you're like, what is a pixel aspect ratio? What is QuickTime? What is Apple ProRes? So you just want to avoid all of that by just using this method, especially if you're a beginner. Now, that is out of the way. Let's look at our sequence timeline. Each sequence by default comes divided into 3 video tracks, which are the 3 at the top, and 3 audio tracks, which are the 3 at the bottom. You can add more should you need them. Videos with audio will be separated into a video track and an audio track. As you can see in our current clip, they'll be linked together whilst in the timeline. This just means if I click on the video layer and drag it, then the audio layer will also follow. And if I click on the audio layer and I drag it, the video layer will also follow. Both of them move together. Video tracks use a hierarchy system, meaning that the video at the top is the one that is shown in the program monitor. Therefore, if you have one video in track V1 and another video above in V2, then only the video in V2 will be shown in the program monitor. Of course, we already explained in the first lesson that the monitor on the left is a source monitor, which previews files that you have selected or double clicked on. And the monitor that's in the middle is a program monitor, which shows clips that are in your timeline. So this is what is in our timeline. We can see it above there. Now I'm just going to add another clip. Let's add this one. I'm just going to create an in point and an out point quickly. And I'm actually going to illustrate something here. I mentioned that if you want your video to be added with your audio at the same time, you can click and drag it in the middle like that. But I'm just going to undo that. For this one, I want to just drag the video only. So we'll just drag this. And as you can see, it's coming in by itself. The audio is not imported into the timeline. So now back to our hierarchy system of video layers. Right now we're seeing what is in the video 1 layer, which is V1 here. And then you will notice what will happen once our playhead gets to where V2 starts. You'll see that in our program monitor, even though there's still a clip in video layer 1, we are only seeing video layer 2 because that's the one that's on top. So that's how the hierarchy system works in video layers inside Premiere Pro. Each video track has the following icons which you can turn on and off. The first one is source patching, which is here where it says V1. And if I hover over, you can see it also tells you source patching for inserts and overwrites. This function only allows you to indicate which layers you want to insert or overwrite your clips to coming from your source monitor. Hence the name source patching. So for example, let's look at those insert and overwrite functions that I said I would re-explain in the previous lesson. From your source monitor, I'm just going to click a different clip here. Let's use this one. Okay. So I'm going to create an in point and an out point somewhere right there. So if I insert this clip like that, it will be added to the timeline. as you can see. And I can continue to do this with different other clips, one after the other. However, if I want to add clips before or in between other clips, this is where knowing the differences between insert and overwrite come into play. So I'm going to undo the insert that I did. If I want to add a clip at this point of my timeline, I can proceed to click insert again. It will add the clip and move everything to the right of the playhead to come after that clip. I'll undo that and use labels just so you can understand a little bit better. You can color clips with different labels by right-clicking on any of the clips, and you navigate to label and you have all these different colors. I'm going to use teal for this one, and then I'll make this mango. So now back again, you will notice what will happen at our playhead here once I click on insert in our source monitor. So you'll see that it split the teal clip and moved everything that was to the right of the playhead to the right, and then it inserted that clip in the middle. So I will undo that again. If I want to overwrite instead, this is what happens. The clip will be added and it will overwrite or delete everything that is within its duration. So remember we spoke about how the time indicator on your source monitor shows what duration is between your in and out point. So for us here, it's 4 seconds. What that simply means is it took this clip and then from where the playhead was, it deleted everything for the next 4.08 seconds and added that clip. Now you notice that when we were doing our insert and overwrite functions, it has been adding it to the video layer 1. That's because our source patching has V1 on it. So let me quickly undo that again. Let's say we wanted to insert this clip, but we don't want it to go into video layer 1. We want it to go to video layer 3. We can just move this source patching to our video layer 3 like so. And we can move our audio source patching to audio layer 3. So now when I click on insert, the same thing happens with insert, but those clips actually go to the video layer 3. And if I undo that, if I click on overwrite, nothing happens to the other layers because in video layer 3, there is nothing in there. So the clip is just added as normal. So that's what source patching does. I've kind of bundled this with explaining what insert and overwrite does as well. I hope that actually made sense. Now that we've covered source patching, the next icon that you'll find on video layers is the lock, which allows you to lock a track so that you do not accidentally change anything on it. You must remember though that when you lock a layer, you cannot change or adjust anything on it. This is good if you want to make edits to other layers without accidentally affecting one layer. So if I click on it, you'll see that it'll add some gray strokes to that layer, which means I now can't actually move it. Be careful though, if you have a video layer, for example, like this one, and you can see this one is actually the audio had been moved. This is a linked video. And if I lock the video layer only, I can still move the audio layer. It'll give you this red indicator just to show you what the offset is between those two clips. But that's just something to note that when you lock a layer, if you want to lock the entire clip, make sure you've locked both the audio and the video layer so that nothing happens between those two, especially for linked clips. And then moving on, we have track target. You can use this option, especially if you want to add or paste a clip into a particular track. For example, I want to copy this clip. Let's say I want to copy this first clip from video layer 1. And I want to paste it in video layer 2. Make sure you deselect video 1 and also deselect audio 1 and 3 so that you only have video 2 and A2 selected. With only those two selected, when you paste, it goes into video layer 2 and audio layer 2. If this does not happen, you've specified V2 and A2, but it still pastes in V1 and A1, it's probably because your keyboard shortcuts have not been set accordingly. So you can change that. You can go to keyboard shortcuts and you can search paste to target track. Your shortcut, which is Control V or Command V, might be on paste to same track. So if it's there, just change it to paste to target track, and then that should start working properly. Same thing if I want to say target video layer 3 and only audio layer 1. If I copy and then paste, you'll see the video goes to V3, but the audio stays in A1. So that's what track targeting does. You can also use track targeting for keyboard shortcuts, like go to in point and go to out point, by making use of your up and down keyboard buttons. Let me select everything actually. So if I click on up, you'll see that it's going to every in and out point that it can find. But if I deselect video layer 3 and deselect audio layer 3, you'll see that when I click on down, it skips this entire clip. It doesn't recognize it as a go-to in or out point. It goes straight to V2. If you're scrubbing through a very busy timeline, this can be something that will be useful just so that you target a certain track or certain tracks. And then the next function you have is sync lock. By default, all layers come with sync lock turned on in Premiere Pro. By switching it off, it allows you to exclude a clip from certain edits. You might be thinking that sounds the same as locking your clip, but it's not entirely the same. I'll show you one of the common ways to make use of sync lock. When inserting your clip, let's say from your source monitor, and let's select another clip here. Let's choose this one. Select our in and out point. Say I wanted to insert this clip, but I do not want anything in video track 1 or audio track 1 to be affected. So I can turn off sync lock on V1 and A1. And most importantly, deselect track targeting and change my source patching to something else. So I'll put my source patching to V3 and A3. And then I can click on insert. You'll notice that this time around, it only moved everything else, but it did not touch anything in V1 and A1. Let me undo that and also label this clip differently for your convenience. So again, remember we've turned off sync lock, we've removed track targeting, and if I insert, it affects everything else except for those two clips that I have turned sync lock off. So this kind of works the same as locking your clip, but the only difference is I can still move it around. I can still edit it. It's not locked. I don't use this nearly as enough as I think some people do. I actually prefer to use the lock function, but for your purpose, I just needed to explain what it does. And then we have the output icon, which is an eye icon. You can make a track visible or hide it in the program monitor by turning this on and off. So if I turned this off, then you can't see that video anymore. And even to better illustrate this, remember the hierarchy system. Right now we're seeing V3, but there's something in V1. So if I hide V3, then we are now seeing what's in V1. Now let's have a look at the audio tracks. The audio tracks don't use the same hierarchy system like videos. No matter which track your audio is placed in, as long as it's active and not on mute, it will play. Each audio track has the following buttons that you can toggle on and off. You have voiceover record, which allows you to record audio straight into the sequence using your computer internal mic or an external one. And then you have solo. Activating this on a layer will only play that one track and mute all the other audio layers. And then you have mute, which, as the name suggests, it will mute that selected track. And then the last four functions are sync lock, track targeting, lock, and source patching, and they work exactly the same as the video layer functions. That's all with regards to audio in your timeline, but that's not all with regards to the sequence panel. We're not yet done. We have a few more functions to go through, which you'll find here at the top. First, there's insert and override sequences. You can use this when you have a separate sequence in your project that you would like to add to the current sequence. Since a sequence like this one has, multiple clips in it, when this button is on, a separate sequence is added as a single combined clip. I'm just going to quickly show you that. So if we go to my project, I actually did the liberty of creating another sequence. Let me just double click on it so you see what it's like. At the top here, we have now 2 new tabs. The first one, which was our cooking 101, and this cooking extra is just for illustration purposes. It's got slightly different clips, but it's still cooking. So it's got other clips in it. I'm just going to close that here. If we wanted to add that sequence into this one, we can drag it from the project and place it anywhere, really. And you'll notice that it's just been added as one video layer and one audio layer, although we know we used 3 different layers in this sequence. So that's what happens when this function is on. So I'm just going to undo that. If we turn it off, it will add all the clips of that sequence unmerged and arranged in their original sequence. So I'm going to turn it off, and now I'm going to add that sequence. It's now brought in all those clips in the way that we actually edited them in the other sequence. And then the next function is snap in timeline. When you have this on, it allows you to easily snap clips to markers or other clips in the timeline. And right now it's on. You can see that if I move, there are these little icons that appear, and it almost snaps to the in point or out point of a clip, and it will do the same if there were markers as well. Then we have linked selection. In the beginning of this lesson, I mentioned that when you add a video together with its audio, they form a link, meaning when you move the video, it also moves with its audio. You can unlink these clips by simply right-clicking and going to unlink. When I do that, now the video and the audio can move separately, but I'll just undo that so that we have that link back. You can do that by turning off linked selection, which allows you to temporarily unlink tracks, but still have the option to reactivate that link later. For example, I will take this same track. Right now, the linked selection is on, but if I turn it off and I click on the video layer, you can see I can now move it independently. But if I leave it, again, I'll get that same warning that we got when we had locked tracks, just to inform me that these 2 tracks are still linked and there's an 11-second offset between them. So even if I move it here, that offset actually keeps on changing. Say I want to move it here, and then I turn linked selection back on. Now the layers are now linked again, and they now move together with that existing offset. And then next you've got add marker. It's got the same shortcut, which is M. We learned about adding markers to individual clips inside the source monitor. In the timeline panel, this function allows you to do the same, however, with a slight difference. To add markers to a desired clip, you have to make sure that it's selected. If I wanted to add a marker to this clip, I need to make sure it's selected, and then I click on M, and you'll see it's added a little marker here. However, if you wanted to add a marker to the entire timeline, you can just click on this negative space, make sure nothing else is selected, and again, press on M, and a marker will be added at the top of your timeline. So this marker does not move with any clip. Unlike this one, if I move the clip, the marker in itself moves as well. But this timeline marker is there at that particular point of your timeline. And then next we've got a timeline display settings icon. This button will open a list of options that allows you to define the settings of your timeline. In this course, we are going to leave the default settings as is. There's nothing we're going to change. And then lastly, we've got a caption track option icon. If you ever edit a video that requires captions, this icon will allow you to turn them on or off. This time indicator at the top here just simply shows you where the playhead sits on your timeline. So currently it's sitting at 10.02 seconds. As it moves, you see that it actually indicates. Again, you can right click to specify if you want to see frames or the time code. And that's it. We are done with the timeline. That was a lot to take in, but I hope it was helpful. And that's most of what you need to know about your timeline panel or sequence panel. The tools available to you in Premiere Pro are as follows. You've got the selection tool, which is self-explanatory. You use this tool to select pretty much anything in the application. And then next, you've got track select forward. This tool allows you to select everything that is in front of or to the right of where you click your cursor. For example, if I click here, this selects everything to the right. You will notice that it also selected this clip, even though it starts way before where I selected. That's because anything that occupies the space that is after where I click will be selected. So since part of this clip only ends after where I've selected, it will also be selected. And then to do the opposite, you can long press onto the same icon and you'll have the option to track select backward, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Shift A. This is track select forward, and if you press on Shift A, then you'll see that the cursor actually changes and the arrows now face backward. So now using the same concept, if I click here, then it only selects the clips that are before that and it excludes everything else. And then next you've got the ripple edit tool, which has the keyboard shortcut B. This allows you to trim the in or out point of a clip at the same time closing the gaps created by that edit whilst preserving all the edits to the left or right of the clip. So for example, let me copy these clips and add them here. Also copy this one, edit there. If I wanted to shorten this clip using the selection tool, I can drag it there and then it leaves this gap right here. And then I would have to move this clip as well. And that already makes it a 2 to 3 step process. I'm gonna undo that. What the ripple edit tool does is it allows you to, when you select it and you go near an in and out point, it changes the cursor to this yellowish icon. And if I click and drag to the left, what it will do is it will shorten the clip that I want to shorten, but it will also close the gap that would have been left had I used a selection tool. Closely related to this tool is the ripple edit function. This works if you have a clip that you would like to delete and at the same time close the gap caused by it. Instead of selecting a clip and deleting it, you can, for example, let's say if I wanted to delete this clip, if I deleted it, there's this gap that has been left. But if I undo that, I can right click on this and go to ripple delete and it deletes the clip and closes the gap. And then if you long press on the ripple edit tool, there are 3 other tools that you find there. The first one is the rolling edit tool. This allows you to roll the edit between 2 clips. It trims the in point of one and the out point of the other, while leaving the combined duration of the 2 clips unchanged. To illustrate that, if I click and drag here, you'll see that it has shortened the first clip, but it has made the second clip longer, although the duration of the 2 clips is still the same. So I can click and drag it like so, or like that. That's what the rolling edit tool does. And then next you've got the rate stretch tool. This allows you to shorten a clip by speeding up its playback or lengthen it by slowing it down. The rate stretch tool changes speed and duration, but leaves the in and out point of that clip unchanged. To illustrate, I'll actually first shorten this clip using the selection tool, and then I'll select the rate stretch tool. This is the duration of the clip right now. If I extend it with the rate stretch tool, the duration will change, but it's still the same clip. So now if I play it back, it's way slower. And the same thing happens if I make it a little bit shorter, it'll be slightly faster than it was. In simple terms, the rate stretch tool is one way of speeding up or slowing down your footage. And then lastly, in that section of tools, we have the remix tool. This tool allows you to remix a song either by making it shorter or longer using artificial intelligence. If you use a selection tool and your music track is 30 seconds long, you can only make it as long as 30 seconds or shorter by trimming it. Whereas the remix tool can intelligently analyze and remix your audio within a matter of seconds and make either an extended version of it or a shortened version of it. Once you use this tool in the timeline, it will launch a remix panel to the right. This panel will have different properties to allow you to further adjust and define your remix. We're just going to go to our project here and drag one of these songs onto our timeline. And this is a perfect way of illustrating how you can add an audio track as well. You can just drag whatever clip you want and drop it under this layer that's written mix, and it will automatically create a new layer. You can also adjust the visibility of these layers. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. This track is about 3 minutes 40 seconds long. And if we wanted to, let's say, use this as background music for a 20-minute documentary, that means we can't actually extend this. We would have to make different copies. So one way would be to copy this and then keep on pasting it until you get to 20 minutes, which can work. But what the remix tool allows you to do is you can just come here and click and drag it all the way to wherever you want it to go, and it'll start doing its clip analysis. And as I mentioned, it opens a new panel here to the right, which kind of messes with our workspace, but we can always adjust it a little just to accommodate what has just happened there. And this panel is called an essential sound panel, which will have the remix properties once it's done. You can see right now it's on 80%. It's actually faster if you have shorter clips or smaller clips that you would like to edit. And just like that, you now have a longer version. Oh wow, I did this by mistake, but it's actually now 5 hours long. This entire track is now 5 hours long. It was 3 minutes, but now it's 5 hours. You can tell a track that has been remixed in Premiere Pro by these little zigzag lines. And if I click on it, you'll see on the panel that it opened to the right, there are properties that you can adjust there. We will not go into that, but this is what this tool actually does for you. So I'm just gonna undo that, and I will close this panel because we actually don't need it, so that we go back to what we actually had. You can also use this, by the way, if you like this track and you want a shorter version of it that is not just cut somewhere, but it actually feels like a short song that ends properly. Then you can also do the same by doing the opposite. And then next you have the razor tool, which allows you to split clips. So if I want to split this clip here, I can just use the razor tool. And the shortcut for a razor tool is C, by the way. And from here, I can press V, which is my selection tool, and click on this part that has been cut out and delete it. So we're going to zoom in again here. Next, we have the slip tool, which has the keyboard shortcut Y. You can use this tool to change the in and out point of a clip at the same time in your timeline while keeping the time span between them constant, which is the duration. For example, the duration of this clip is 2 seconds. I can use the slip tool to determine which 2 seconds of this clip is actually being shown. So if I click and drag to the left or to the right, those two windows that you now see on your program monitor are showing you, the one on the left is showing you the in point, and the one on the right is showing you the out point. You can drag and see where you want it to come in and where you want it to stop. Then when you're happy, you can just release your mouse. And then next we've got the slide tool, which you get from the same section by long pressing. This allows you to move a clip to the left or right while trimming the two clips that surround it at the same time. The combined duration of the 3 clips and the location of the group in the timeline remain unchanged. So if I move this clip, as you can see, it trims the one to the left and trims the one to the right, but the duration of 3 remains the same. So if I do it this way, if I do it that way. And then we also have the pen tool. You can use this to create keyframes or to adjust connector lines in your timeline. And then you've got a group of shape tools. You've got a rectangle, ellipse tool, or a polygon tool. To use any of the shape tools, you have to go straight to the program monitor and, for example, draw a rectangle here. Once I draw, as you see here, it has created a layer on my timeline with a graphic on it. And if I double click on this graphic, it will open another tab to our right, which is called the Essential Graphics tab. And it will open another tab called the text next to our source monitor. Do not be frightened by these panels. They are just here to help you. So I can do some adjustments here as well. You have a couple of options of how you can edit this shape. You can use your effect controls. Like I mentioned in earlier lessons, that you can find properties to edit in your effect controls. So here we can change the color of the square. We can give it a stroke if we want. We can give it a shadow. We can change the position of it, the scale, the opacity as well. We wanted to, we can do all of this in our effect controls, but you also have more control in the essential graphics, which you get once you double click on the graphic layer, and you can use this to center align it to your frame, but you have the same options as well to change the opacity, to change the color, and to change the size of it as well, the rotation, all of that. I'm just going to delete that shape. Next, you have a zoom tool, which allows you to zoom in or out. To zoom in, you can click anywhere on your timeline. It'll zoom in. To zoom out, you press on Option or Alt, and you'll see that the cursor actually changes a bit and has a minus icon in the middle, and then you can zoom out. And then lastly, you've got the type tool and the vertical type tool. They work the same, just slightly different. So if I click anywhere on the program monitor, just like the shape tools, you go straight to your program monitor, click on it, and an essential graphics panel will appear and a graphic layer will be added to your timeline, and you can type anything. You can say cooking 101, and just like the shape tools, you can edit properties from your effect controls, or you can use essential graphics and you can center align this. You can change the font as you like. You can change how the text aligns. You can change the color, and you have different things that you can do with this. And the vertical type tool does the same. The only difference is it types things going vertically, cooking, just like that. I'm just going to delete that as well. The program monitor has similar functions as the source monitor. The only exception is instead of insert and overwrite functions, you have lift and extract, which are these two over here. Everything else is the same. You have add marker, you have mark in, mark out, and go to endpoint. All of that, you can export a frame. But these two on the source monitor, it's insert and overwrite, whereas in the program monitor, it's lift or extract. Both these functions only work with the use of in and out points inside your timeline. They are probably not the most popular functions in the application. However, if you ever need to use them, lift allows you to cut all the clips that lie in between the in and out points of your timeline. And to do that, I can either click this mark in from my program monitor, or I can just click on I, which is the keyboard shortcut. And if I want to create an out point, I can also just click here or use O on my keyboard. And have a look at what happens when I lift. You'll see that it cut all the clips that were within that in and out point, but you'll notice that these two actually didn't. And I will explain why. If you remember what we learned in the previous lessons, you will probably know why. That's because our track targeting is only on A4. So A1, A2, A3, there is no track targeting. That's why the lift didn't work there. So I'm just going to undo it. And then I'm going to switch on track targeting for all our audio layers. Now, when I lift again, it actually cuts everything there. And I can go anywhere else in the timeline, and then I'll just paste it like so. So I'm just going to undo that again. And then extract allows you to do the same thing that lift does, but in addition, it will also ripple delete the gap left by the cut. So to better explain this, I'll copy some of this footage and put it to the right like so, and just bring this a little bit closer. So if we use lift, this is what happens. It cuts everything and then it leaves a gap. But if we use extract, it cuts everything, but it closes the gap in between, as you see there. And then I can paste whatever I extracted somewhere else. And that's it. That's what those two functions do for you. The rest are self-explanatory. They're similar to the source monitor. The only difference is this affects the program monitor, which is everything that is on the timeline. So if I press play here, it plays on the timeline. Whereas if I press play in the source monitor, it's only playing what's on the source monitor. And if I create an endpoint here, I'm creating an endpoint on the timeline. Whereas if I create an endpoint here or an out point, I'm creating it in the source monitor. To access properties of a clip, you have to select it. If I have nothing selected here, if I just select in negative space, you'll see there's nothing in the effect controls panel. But once I click on something, it will reveal the properties of that clip, and it will also highlight the name of that clip. So if I zoom in here, this clip ends with 2824, and that's the same here on the effect controls. So you have access to motion, and if I drop this down, you have position. So I can change the position. If you see, if I move it around, it changes position. And all these properties have this reset icon to the right. So let's say you moved this by mistake and you don't remember what the default setting was. You can just click on this reset and it'll snap back to where it was. And scale this, you can scale this up or down. And remember, what you see in the program monitor is what the final video will look like when you've rendered it. If you want this clip to be all the way zoomed in like this, then you can do so, or you can just keep it the same way. Rotation, this rotates whichever way you want it. Under opacity, you can change the transparency of your clip. You see, if I drag it up and down, it changes the transparency. You can also change the blend mode. If you're familiar with other Adobe software like Photoshop, then you understand what blend modes are. I'll just do something that is, of course, for illustration purposes. If I use screen, for example, you can see that it's blending the clip that's at the top and the clip that's at the bottom. It's just things that you can do when you want a specific effect. You can use different blending modes. They're going to give you different results. And then you have time remapping. And this is also another way of changing the speed of your clip. You can make it faster or you can make it slower using this. So you can drag this line down or drag it up to make it faster. And the faster you make the clip, the shorter it becomes on your timeline, because once it's faster, it means it's shorter. Those were your video properties. And then you also have audio properties. You can change the volume, the gain of your audio. You can change the gain on the left or the right side using different channels. And you can also change the panning between left and right channels as well. Each and every clip will have its own controls. Additionally, as mentioned in one of the first lessons, the effect controls panel will also allow you to edit effects and transitions that have been applied to your clips. When you add an effect or a transition, its controls will also appear here in the effects control panel. Let us try to add a transition. So I'm just going to minimize these for you to see easier. And I'll go to the effects panel down here at the bottom. And there's so many different effects that you can use, but I will use one of the popular ones, which is dip to black. The dip to black transition, as the name suggests, makes your clip dip to black, usually used at the end of a clip. So if I go to the end of maybe this one, I can click and drag and drop it at the end of this clip. So you'll see what will happen here is when I play, the video just ends like that. It dips into black. If I click on this video layer with transitions, you'll see that we are seeing the same properties. But if I want to edit this transition as well, I can click just on top of it. So I'm just gonna adjust this. I can click it and you'll see the properties will appear here as well. So I have room to increase the duration. So I can either click or drag it from here, and that will increase the duration of that dip to black, or I can increase the duration here manually by just specifying if I want it to be 5 seconds, and then it'll do it by itself, but I don't want it to be that long. You can also just adjust it even from the timeline by just clicking and dragging here as well. That's also up to you. This is how you adjust almost all the transitions. If we use cross dissolve and drop it between these two clips, you see what transition it does there. If you're not happy with it being that long, you can either click on it and then adjust it from the effect control panel by adjusting the duration, or you can just click and drag it on your timeline to make it shorter, and then just like that you have a nice transition. Moving on to effects. Say we wanted to add a magnify effect, for example. I don't know why I would use a magnify effect on a cooking video, but you can search for it here, magnify, and then click and drag it onto the clip that you want to put the magnifying effect. You'll see that the properties will then appear here, and you can change the size, and you can change the position of your magnifying effect, and you can adjust the magnification, and yeah, you can play around with it. I don't know why you would need this for such a video, but this is just to show you that when you have an effect, the properties will appear here. So we can delete this magnifying effect. Maybe let's put another effect. We can use a blur. I usually like to use this. I don't know if it's Gaussian blur or Gaussian blur, Gaussian blur. I don't know, but it's blur, right? Once I've dragged it, the properties appear here, and I can adjust the blurriness from there. And I'm just going to undo that. And that is the effect controls panel and what it can do for you. You can use masks in different properties or effects. They allow you to isolate a specific area in a clip. You can create and modify masks in Premiere Pro using an ellipse tool, rectangle tool, or you can draw a free form shape using the pen tool. In the natural properties of any clip, you can use a mask tool in its opacity. This allows you to only show a certain area of the clip. For example, under opacity, I can use the ellipse tool. Once I click on it, you will see that it has isolated the area that's within this circle or the ellipse tool. And I can move it around to show whatever I want in that frame. And of course, the other video that you're seeing is the one that's at the bottom, if you remember the hierarchy system. So I will delete this mask. The same thing happens with creating a mask using the rectangle tool or the four corner shape. You can also create your own shape. Let's say I just want to create a shape around this lid of the pot. I can create a shape. Of course, that's not great, but you can then change the settings here. You can feather it out. You can change the opacity of the mask. You can change the expansion. You can do different things with the mask that you would have created. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would I even need to make use of this? Well, I've made a couple of videos on my YouTube where I used masks to achieve certain results in videos, whether it's creating clones or it's creating certain illusions, making things disappear. And these kind of tools or functions are what allow you to do that when you're editing your videos. And I can delete this. And you can also use masks for effects. I am going to bring back our blur effect and add it to our clip here. I would want to apply blur to this clip. I only want it to affect the surroundings of this pot. I know this clip already has a good depth of field, and you can see the pots at the back, they are blurred out, but I just want to add a little bit more and maybe even blur this handle of this other pot as well. I can either create a shape around where I want it to be, or I can use any of these shapes. What I'll do is I'll actually create my own shape. So I'll zoom out using our zoom level here, and I'll make it 25. I'll go to our pen tool or our bezier tool. Make sure you're under the blur effect. And once you click on it, you just want to draw a shape around the area you want to isolate. So once you've done that, we've isolated the pot in itself, and you'll see what's going to happen. Let me put this back to fit. If I now increase the blurriness of this clip, it's applying the blur to the inside of the mask, which is not what we want. We want it to be outside, so we can always click on inverted. Now the blur is outside the mask, but you can also see that it's not smooth. It's almost evident that we've added a little bit more blur. And to hide that, under the mask, we can adjust the feather of the mask. This just softens the edges. If the feather is on 0, you can notice that there's an evident line here to show that there's a mask. But if we feather it out, you notice that it just softens that blur way more. So I think I'm happy with the feather being at 180. Now, even if we increase the blur, it just affects the outside. And also the same way you can hide layers, your video layers in the timeline, you can also hide effects in your effect controls panel. So if I hide the blur here, it will stop showing the program monitor. And if I put it back, then it shows. So this is the before and after. So this is also how you can use masks with effects inside Premiere Pro. Okay, let's talk about keyframes. Keyframes allow us to animate properties of a clip over time. Inside the effects controls panel, if you see this time icon next to a property, it's a sign that you can animate that property. A keyframe marks the point in time where you specify a value, such as a position, scale, amount, opacity, and so on. For example, let's say we have a box. Let's actually draw a box here and say we would like to move this box from the far left, which would be our point A, to the far right, which would be our point B. What we want is for our box to move like so over time as the video is playing. And this is just for illustration purposes. To do that, we take our playhead to the part of our video where we want the box to start. Let's say we want it to start here, and we click on this time icon, which creates a keyframe. I'm just going to adjust this a little, and I'm actually going to move this here. So if you notice, this little diamond icon is actually a keyframe. That's what it looks like. And then if we move across our timeline, and by the way, here this playhead actually also moves the playhead on your timeline. It's just a mirror of what's happening there. And we can then change the properties at that particular point. You'll notice it's created another keyframe. Essentially what it has done is we've told the computer, or Premiere Pro in this case, that at this particular point of the timeline, the box is here. And further down the road, at this particular point of the timeline, the box has moved here. And in between here, it just calculates by itself using linear motion. And when we play back, the box moves itself to that location. That's how keyframes work. It's not just position. You can do this for scale. You can do this for rotation. You can do it for opacity. And you can do it for all sorts of things. Even if you wanted to move a mask that you have created, as long as a property has this time icon, you can actually change it. Another way of animating your clips is in the timeline. So if I just extend this video layer, all the video layers start off with opacity as the primary property that shows in your timeline. If we right click here, you have opacity checked on there, and you'll see that there is a line at the top here. And this line represents the opacity at 100. If I click on this line and drag it down, you'll notice that it changes the opacity on our timeline. And as I drag it down, it also gives you a value. You see right now it's at 60, 56, 55, and it goes down like that. And to add keyframes to this, you can select your pen tool. Let's say we want it to fade in from 0 transparency to 100 transparency. So we can create a keyframe somewhere here at 100%, and we create another keyframe, go back to our selection tool and drag and drop this down to 0 when it starts. So now when we play our clip, it actually starts from here, and it over time goes from 0 to 100% transparency. So that's how you do it. You can do this for many other different things. To access these properties, you go to the FX icon on your clip in your timeline. You right click on it and then you just choose whichever property you would like to change. This is another way you can do speed ramping. This is actually the most popular way of speed ramping in Premiere Pro. This line represents your speed. You can create keyframes and you can make certain parts of your video faster. I usually use this mostly for opacity and time remapping. Then for audio, you can also adjust certain properties. You can adjust volume, you can adjust channel volume, panning, and if you have any effects on your audio, you can also do that. One of the things that I love doing actually is using a low pass filter. So I'm just going to quickly illustrate that. If we type in low pass filter and add it to our clip, we can right click here, go to low pass, cut off, and we can add 2 keyframes. Another way of adding keyframes is whilst you have your selection tool on already, you can go over the line and then click on Command or Control on your keyboard, and you'll see the icon will change there. When you click, it'll create a keyframe. What I usually like to do is do this with my audio files. Let's make it even longer so that it starts off with the low pass filter and then it gradually goes up. You can do this with different kinds of effects, but that's how you can create keyframes inside Premiere Pro. Let's teach you how to add text in Premiere Pro. It's actually very simple to do. You can just select your type tool, which is on your tools panel, and you can just click anywhere on the program monitor and write cooking class. You can write whatever it is that you want to write. And once you've clicked on the program monitor, like I discussed in the tools lesson, you will notice that a graphic layer will be created at the bottom here, and that clip will have default text effect controls in your effect controls panel. However, for better editing purposes, to deal with text or graphics, you can use another panel which is called the Essential Graphics panel. To add it, you can either double click on your graphics or text layer, but if that doesn't work, you can go to Window and then you can navigate to Essential Graphics. And once you click on it, it'll usually appear on your far right. And as you can see, it has kind of messed up our workspace that we love so dearly, but we can make adjustments and adjust a few things here and there, move things around. That's the good thing about Premiere Pro. You can really move the workspace around. So now we have the Essential Graphics panel to the right. We'll close the properties that are in the Effect Controls panel and focus on the controls that are in the Essential Graphics, because this is where you have more control. If you have nothing selected, if you're just selecting negative space, you'll see there's nothing in the Essential Graphics. And if you select something that's not a graphic or a text, nothing appears in Essential Graphics. But if we select on our text layer, then it actually appears, and it will also have somewhat of its own layers in here. The cooking class text is one layer, but we can actually add another text or a shape within this already existing clip. Let's say I wanted to add another text layer there. I can say tutorial, and then we can align these properly like that. Now we have 2 layers. I can hide or unhide them using these icons. But let me tell you more about this Essential Graphics panel. I've explained the layers. There are a couple of things that you can change here. You have align and transform, so you can align this accordingly to your frame, whether you want it to be centered, to be at the top, or wherever you want it to be. And you have a couple of options as well to move it around using position, to scale up and down, and this is opacity, and this is rotation, and this is your anchor point. I will just undo all of those changes that I just did, and I'll keep it there. I like how it looks right now. You also have styles, which we don't have any. You could create a style or you can import one, but for the purposes of this course, we are not covering that. And then you have text, where you can change the font that you're using. You can change the weight of that font, you want to make it bold, or if you want to make it regular or light. This is the size of your font that you can change. And right now you can see it's left aligned text. I would like to make it center aligned. And then I can just go back to my align tools, make sure that's in the center so that when I change the size of my font, it remains in the middle. But I'll leave it at 100 as it was. And then you also have a couple of tools. These are going to be very familiar if you've used Photoshop, Illustrator, or InDesign. If I wanted to make it all caps, if I click that, it'll make it all caps no matter what I do on my keyboard. And then you can also change the tracking. You can change the kerning, you can change the leading, you can also do baseline shift. You have so many options here. And under appearance, you can change the color of your text. You can add a stroke, you can add a background, and within that background, you can change the opacity. You can also change the expansion or size of that background to make it bigger, and you can change the color. I don't know why you'd make it red, but you can also make the background have rounded corners, and you can add a shadow. You have so many different options of what you can do. You can play around with them as much as you want, but I don't want a background and I don't want a shadow. So I'm just going to remove that. And just like we learned in the previous lesson, we can also keyframe the opacity. So make it blend in as it comes in. So I'll create a keyframe here, put 0 opacity, move up a little and bring the opacity back to 100. So now this is how our video starts. And that is how you add text and how you can edit it in Premiere Pro. This lesson will not be an in-depth into color grading, but rather an introduction to the basics of the color workspace in Premiere Pro, more particularly the Lumetri color effect. To start, we have to introduce a Lumetri color panel. And to do that, you can navigate to Window and you can click on Lumetri color. It will most likely add it all the way to the right. And once again, we can just adjust our workspace just so that we have a little bit of breathing room with all our panels. And there we have it. This is the Lumetri color panel. Lumetri color has 6 main sections. Firstly, you have the basic correction. This is where you can edit the color temperature and tint of your clip, as well as the exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, and saturation. You can easily adjust each of these properties using the sliders. You have a reset button to reset everything. Now let's hide this text layer. Let's make changes to this clip that's in V1. If I change the temperature, if I slide it to the left or the right, you can see what it's doing. I can change the tint, I can change the saturation, but I'm just going to reset that. You can make a few adjustments, shadow, saturation a little bit. And then you have the creative section. If you have ever heard of anything called LUTs or looks, this is the section you can apply them in Premiere Pro. There are a few that come standard with the application, but you can always download some and install them. You can find them under this drop-down menu next to look. Once selected, you can define the intensity of that look. You can either crank it up or you can make it a little bit less intensive. Not many people use LUTs with a high intensity. And then you have a couple of more controls here that you can use. You can make your film a little bit faded if you want it. You can sharpen it a little bit more, and you can increase vibrance and saturation as well. But once again, we'll reset this. The next section is curves. Curves are great if you want to do fine adjustments to your clip. Color grading is not the same for everyone. People do it in different ways. Some will start with the basic correction and then go into curves. Some will start with curves and start tweaking other things later. So it's not a straightforward process per se, but you can use curves to further adjust your colors, and you can also use what are called U saturation curves, or U versus U, or U versus Luma curves. Just to explain a little bit, U saturation curves allow you to pick and adjust a particular color parameter of your clip, and hue versus saturation, adjust saturation. Hue versus hue, adjust the hue. Hue versus luma, adjust the luma and brightness. And then we have color wheels match. This is where you can fine tune your clip even more, especially if you want the various clips in your timeline to all match and appear the same, or as if they were part of one project. You'll have different sliders that you can make use of, and you can play around with them until you find what works for you. The next section is HSL secondary. HSL stands for hue, saturation, and luma. You can isolate a certain color in your clip. For example, if I use this eyedrop and click on the green dress, check your color tab, and you can even add a bit more of that green, like so. This option just allows you to see what you've actually selected, and once you are happy with your selection, you can do things like affecting only that color. So if I decrease the saturation, you can see it's only affecting that green color and nothing else. You can also change the hue of that color, the contrast, and you can do some color correction as well of that green if you're not happy with it. But you can also reset this if you're not happy. The last section is vignette, which just allows you to either create dark corners or bright corners in your frame, and you can adjust the midpoint, the roundness of that vignette, as well as the feathering. That's it for the Lumetri color panel. As I said, this is not an in-depth color grading lesson. I myself am not a colorist. This is just enough for you to know the basics of how you can edit color and other things inside Premiere Pro. Well done for getting this far. It is time for us to learn the final, easiest, but equally important part, which is to export your project. When you're done editing your project and you do not have any defined in or out points in your timeline, Premiere Pro will define the duration of your project as from the 0-second mark up until the end of the last clip in your timeline. However, you can choose an in and out point to specify exactly where you want your video to start exporting and where you want it to end. Once you have done so, you have a couple of options. You can either go to File and then go to Export and click on Media. That's one option. Or you can actually use the keyboard shortcut, which is Command M or Control M. And the last option is you can just go to this tab at the top and go to Export. Because we didn't define an in or out point in our timeline, it'll just export everything. However, if you have an in or out point, you can always choose the range here to say source, in, and out. However, once you are on this export window, you have so many different options, and Premiere Pro has come such a long way. Now you can publish straight to YouTube, you can publish to TikTok, you can publish to Facebook, you can take it to your Creative Cloud, but we want to export it as a media file in our computer. You can choose the name here. I'm just going to leave it as Cooking 101, and you can select where you want it to save on your computer. This is where you can define presets. There are a lot of presets that already come with Premiere Pro. So if you know you want it to be on YouTube and you want it to be 1080p or 4K, most likely if you shot in 4K, you want to export 4K. If you shot 1080p, you want to export 1080p. Or if you're not sure, what you can also do is just say match sequence preview settings. This is going to match the preview settings of your sequence, but you have other options. You can go in here and really specify if you want a certain video codec. If you're a beginner, I'm not so sure if this is something you want to be changing around, but the options are there. You can choose different audio options, and if you want to export the video only, you can just uncheck the audio here, and this will just leave the video on. Or you can just export the audio only and you can uncheck the video, and then now it will only export audio. And on your format, you can then navigate to if you want an MP3 or if you want a wave audio, but we want both. So we'll go back to YouTube 1080p because I know I shot this at 1080p, so I'm happy with that. And I just click on export, and that is it.